finally get to meet him. Darius Foroux is here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Your journey along this Stoicism path, it seems to me, based on what I've read, is because you lost what was to you at that time a significant amount of money. Can we talk about you going to work for the bank and how kind of your journey started toward this path toward Stoicism?
Yeah, so it's 2007, year before the great financial crash, and I'm in college and I want to earn some money on the side. I find this job vacancy for working at a large international bank in the kind of personal banking department. So
It was ING, right? I mean, huge bank.
yeah, ING Direct was huge, and they were on a tear. And I started working there in the evenings, basically just doing standard banking stuff. People asking for credit cards, processing their applications, etc. And after a while, I got this opportunity to go to the investing side, and I learned about how mutual funds work. And I start calling high net worth individuals, offering them the latest mutual funds, etc. So I thought I was this hotshot, and I always loved investing. And I thought to myself, well, the bank is doing great. I bought the stocks, and then within a year, the crash happens, and before I know it, I'm down 60%. And that experience, it was like someone punching me in the gut. I couldn't even imagine that it would be so painful. So that experience kind of put me off from investing, because I thought to myself, I need to figure out how I can avoid this from happening again. Because I thought to myself, like, I'm investing all of my savings. If I earn more in the future, imagine that happening to all of my money. So that's where this whole desire of managing my emotions came from. And it took me many years to really figure out the key to that.
How did you come across this idea that it wasn't the stock market, but it was something internal that you really needed to change? It was your wiring.
I always knew that the way to wealth was through stocks somehow, because I just looked at the wealthiest people, even during that time. And if you look at it today, these are all folks who either are large shareholders of companies that they founded, or are investors like Warren Buffett for so many years. And in the beginning, I thought that more knowledge would get over my emotions, because that was my initial thinking. And I still wasn't able to invest. I just couldn't collect my emotions to get back into the market, because I actually sold my initial stocks after a year and a half or 2 years. I just couldn't get back in. During all this time, I just kept studying and learning more. Here and there, I would see these hints from Benjamin Graham or Warren Buffett talking about you need to master yourself, or your emotions are your biggest enemy. They're telling you to master your emotions, but they're not telling you how to do it. So I just kept on searching and searching, and it honestly wasn't until 2015 when I finally discovered Stoicism. I realized that this is an ancient Greek philosophy, and they're talking about how you can deal with the ups and downs of life. And all I'm thinking when I'm reading ups and downs of the market, from the beginning, I started to connect Stoicism with investing. So I think that's how I kind of trained myself. When I finally discovered the Stoics, I knew I was onto something.
Let's dive in a little bit to the Stoics to give our stacker community that isn't as familiar with Stoicism. People often don't understand their philosophical upbringing, but Stoicism is definitely a set point of view. So can you talk a little bit about the Stoic?
Stoicism is, I think, the most practical philosophy that exists, because you can summarize it in one sentence, which is simply focus on what you control and ignore everything else. And in a way, it's risk management, because all that risk management is a focus on maximizing the things that are within your control and minimizing your efforts and focus on the things that are not within your control. Kind of a way of life where you're always thinking about every type of situation that you are in, and you're thinking to yourself, what do I control when it comes to my habits? What do I control when it comes to raising my kids? What do I control when it comes to my career? And of course, what do I control when it comes to investing? Some folks kind of relate it to bro and macho entrepreneurial culture, where a lot of folks say that, oh, Stoicism helps me to ignore everything in life and my emotions, and just have this laser focus. And I don't think that's really true. I don't think they really understand Stoicism, because if you look at all of these success or these famous Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus and Musonius Rufus, another famous Stoic, all of them except for Epictetus were wealthy, and they had a lot of resources, and they could do anything they wanted in life. They could live extravagant lives, but they consciously decided to live a very balanced, and in some cases even stringent life, where they would train themselves to become stronger and better and focus on doing the honorable thing.
Practicing some stoicism has helped me become an observer of my feelings.
Mm,
So instead of just feeling the thing and then acting out on that feeling, I feel like there's more of this shock absorber. You know what I mean?
mm.
About why am I feeling this and where am I? Am I truly like I'm much more an observer of the present because of stoicism? Would you find that to be true?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. Since I discovered the philosophy, I also started journaling. And that's how I actually observe myself. Shock absorber is a great way to look at it, because by applying stoicism in your life, you kind of create this additional step for yourself before you respond to things. Because as we all know, that life is not about what happens to us, it's about how we respond. Everybody knows this, but everybody also knows how difficult it is to put that idea into practice. And Stoicism is just a collection of reminders that you can use in daily life.
Let's then go down that logic chain that you begin with when it comes to investing, because you very logically take us to this place where we may have one of four advantages. And I'd love for you to talk about these different edges that we may have. First, you talk about we may have, when it comes to investing, we may have an information edge. Tell me about how we get that.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the most classic investment edges that investors focused on since the start of modern day investing. That, in my opinion, started with Benjamin Graham in the late 1920s, early 1930s, um, where they would look at the information they could collect as an investor that other people might not have. And in that way, you could gain an edge over all the other investors when it came to individual stocks. It's very difficult to really gain an edge when it comes to information. You really have to be extremely passionate about analyzing individual stocks to that level. So gaining an information edge, I feel like, sounds great in theory, but in practice is almost impossible for the average investor.
Next, you have the quant edge. What's the quant edge?
The Quant Edge kind of started with quantitative analysis with famous investor Edward Thorpe and also the late Jim Simons. It's an edge that is still working because the fund that Jim Simons ran for many years did even better than Warren Buffett. Problem is that quantitative analysis and creating math formulas and econometrics, etc., is usually left for the geniuses of the world. And Jim Simons' fund famously only hired PhDs and NASA scientists, but that's kind of out of reach for an average investor.
The third is the size edge, which of course is if we have enough money, enough resources, we can gain special favors, special deals that other people can't get, which brings us to the fourth edge, which is the Stoic Edge. And this one is available to all of us. And if I summarize it, tell me if I've got this right, Darius. The Stoic Edge kind of is just stop doing stupid shit. Would you say that's true?
Most folks don't have a Stoic Edge. The Stoic Edge really teaches you that if you want to be successful as an investor, simply pick a strategy, stick to it through all the ups and downs. No matter what happens, you just got to stay the course, as John Bogle famously said. But the problem is that it's very difficult when new events happen in the market. Then we think to ourselves, well, I don't have a playbook for this, but you have. You just need to manage your emotions and remind yourself that there's nothing really new. Okay, certain things happened in a different way. And of course, when the pandemic happened, also that was new. But when it came to the underlying principles of the market, which is, the stock market keeps going up as long as the economy keeps going up, we quickly realized that the economy was going to adapt. And as an investor, we should also quickly realize that, well, the market will survive.
I just remember how many stupid things people did. They would, to your point, let their emotions get in the way. I remember getting fired in 1999 by, during the big web 1.0, right? Everything's going online. And I had a client fire me because his portfolio did 49% because we were staying diversified, and all of his friends were doubling their money and we only did 49. So I got canned for 49, which is following the story too closely and not controlling your emotions and looking at the bigger picture. So I thought then, where's this funnel headed? Okay, we're going to talk about all these things that the vast majority of us mess up. You don't start there. Then I turn the page and I laugh because you start with number one, invest in you. Why do you begin this Stoic Edge with investing in yourself?
When you interpret Stoicism in the kind of the purest and simplest way, I think you can't start anywhere else other than yourself. I think if you want to have a long career as an investor, it's almost impossible without a foundation that's built on skills and self confidence. Because ultimately, where does self confidence come from? Comes from learning skills, putting them into practice, getting feedback, and feeling good about that. So I feel like every investor should always acquire new skills, just in general, not necessarily that you can apply as an investor, but as a professional, because most folks want to invest passively. They want to invest for their retirement. And we have full-time jobs. And if we are good at what we do, we realize that, hey, I don't have to have this scarcity mindset. Because when you have a scarcity mindset, then you always think of what you can lose. And if you become too attached to the little or quote unquote money that you earn, it's very difficult to part ways with it, because what is investing? It's basically parting ways with your money now until a future date that who knows when that is, right? So I feel like that's the most important thing you can do for yourself if you want to have a long-term career as an investor. If you really focus on the foundation of capitalism and providing value in the economy, you realize that you can earn a living, and then you can let go of that scarcity mindset of, okay, every dollar that I earn, I need to hold on to it and I need to put it under my pillow or to a very safe savings account or in bonds or any place where it's quote unquote safe, versus a stoic who invests in themselves and simply focuses on what they control and sees that they can provide value in the economy and in return can earn a decent or good living, can say, well, okay, 10, 20, 30% of my income, I can just set aside and say goodbye to it. And then in 10 or 20 years, it's maybe worth two times or whatever, how much. I don't even really care. As long as it's worth more than it is today, I'm satisfied with it. And all right, everybody says that the S&P 500 did 10% annualized returns over the past 50 years or post World War II. Great. If it does 11 or 9, I'm also great with that. And I think that's that confident state of mind that you can only acquire by investing in yourself. I've never really met a person who could really fake it, because during those tough moments in the market, you think, oh, I might need that money. And that's something that you can only, in my experience, avoid by really starting with the foundation, and that's investing in yourself.
This is something that I saw back when I was a financial planner. The most underappreciated asset my client had was their ability to earn more money. They would think a lot about clipping coupons. They'd think about cutting expenses. They would think about their investments far more. but themselves and their
Yeah.
ability to bring home more, but way underappreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing is that folks who generally hire a financial planner or a financial advisor are generally the most financially responsible people anyway. Because if you are not financially responsible or you're not thinking about building wealth, you're not going to hire someone to help you do that. And I think those folks worry too much about their own ability to survive or to thrive and their ability to retire comfortably, because I feel like too many folks put a lot of pressure on themselves to save a lot and be very stringent, while they can just invest in the market and let compounding do the work and just focus all of their energy on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got four pieces to this skill springboard. I want to kind of end on this note because this will be incredibly helpful for our stackers. When you're looking at gaining new skills, you talk first, and these may sound easy, but you see people again make huge mistakes in all of these areas. Number one, you've got work with your natural abilities. Where do I start there, Darius?
Yeah, like you were saying about Stoicism, how it's kind of about self awareness and helps you to put up a mirror. I think when you start by doing a self analysis and understanding what you are naturally good at, you have a lot more upside potential when it comes to earning a living. Because one of the things that I've really subscribed to in my career is the idea that Peter Drucker, the famous management consultant, made popular, which is to focus on your strengths and ignore your weaknesses. Because I do think the idea of improving your weaknesses sounds good in theory, and I think is good when it comes to athletes or working out. But in our careers, it doesn't make financial sense. What am I actually good at and what do I love to do? Let me just focus on that.
I want to ask you about this next one, which is learn from the best.
When you want to improve your skills, it's very tempting to look at what's accessible to you in terms of teachers and information. Let's say you want to start a business or you want to get into real estate. Most folks just ask their friends. Another statistic that I also read recently is they go to TikTok for financial advice. Honestly, one of the biggest mistakes that young folks make, learn from their peers instead of learning from the absolute best who actually have done the things that you want to do.
Today, it seems like you can go find out who the top person is. You've been quoting Benjamin Graham and Warren Buffett today. I can go look up a ton about these people.
Exactly. And investing especially, there is so much content from the best. It's like the another Warren Buffett quote, the LeBron James analogy that he made, which is to always bet on your best player or best stock or best company versus the 20th player. Um, you can apply that to stocks, but also to knowledge. So if you have the opportunity to learn from the best, why would you settle for anything else?
I want to ask you a question from the back of your new book, which you say that we should be like granite. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that's a reference to something that I read post financial crisis. I think this was before the market started the, to go up again. At that time, I was out of the market and I read this column online. And it always stuck with me because the writer said something like, if you are still in this market that is on the collapse of breaking down and the financial system might not survive, etc., you must be made of granite. And I thought maybe as a point because it's looking really bad. But then, as we all know, the market started to recover, and a few years later, we were back. And since then, since the early 2010s, it's been almost all the way up in a straight line, with the exception of 2020 and, of course, 2022. But still, we've experienced a few corrections and crashes. But even if you want to make sure that you can stay the course, you have to look at yourself as someone who can endure, as someone who is actually made of granite, who is the opposite of all of those naysayers and doomsday thinkers that always seem to jump out of the woods as soon as there is a hint of negativity or potential risks. When all of these doomsday thinkers come out, you have to be made of granite. And you are, because it's all about a mindset. If you look at yourself as someone who can endure, you will also endure as long as you follow the path and start from the bottom and invest in yourself and really do the right thing and don't take on risks that you just can't handle. And ultimately, when you're a long-term investor, all of these short-term crashes are short-term, and that knowledge should give you a lot of peace so you can just stay the course and just enjoy your life. And I think ultimately that's why we all invest.
Tony Robbins had something that I really appreciated. He said that if you hear one person say a thing, they have a point of view, maybe it's theirs, but you hear 4 or 5 or 6 people say it, maybe this is a universal truth. And Darius, to write a book that is ancient wisdom from enduring prosperity, from person after person after person, talks about Stoicism, and to bring it to money management truly was a fantastic read for me. And just this idea that we can be great, not by coming up with this big aha or this cool thing, but it's refusing to give in to the same things that just kill investors over and over and over, I thought was really powerful. Darius, thank you so much for being a stoic mentor to our stacker community. I super appreciate you.
And likewise, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.